Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching my show, William Wallace for America. Thank you so much for joining me on my Freedom Forum. I always like to find ways where freedom is being lost in America. It's more than what you realize, which is why I do this show every week and every week with unique guests. And every week I hear something different. With me in this interview for the first 15 minutes is Brilyn Hollyhand. Brilyn, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Happy Monday. I'm excited to be here.
Happy Monday, and thanks to Caroline Joyous for introducing us. I'll have to give her a shout out on that
Absolutely,
her,
absolutely.
on her platform. Brylan, when did you get started? Briefly, when did you get started? And we'll talk more about your platform at the end. But when did you get started? You're pretty young.
Sure. Yeah, I'm 17 years old, but I was a lot younger than that when I started this whole thing. I first got interested in politics during the 2016 presidential election, kind of started watching some of the debates and was just interested, but didn't take action. Well, the next year when I turned 11, it was July of 2017. I was finally fed up with the fake news, mainstream media that you and I just hate so much. And I
Mhm.
finally decided, look, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to speak out. And if they aren't going to do it at the time, I guess the 11-year-old me was going to have to. So at the age of 11, I founded the Truth Gazette at thetruthgazette.com. And it was a small email newsletter just sent out to like 7 friends or family, really the aunts and uncles that were like forced to read it so it won't be awkward at the Thanksgiving dinner table. And after that, it really expanded and grew. And we just hit the 6 year anniversary like 2 weeks ago. I interviewed over 50 of our country's top political figures from Donald Trump Jr., Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, a lot of mutual friends of ours. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun ride, a fun journey. It feels like I just started yesterday, but somehow it's been 6 years. So I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, we need more people like you to not only protect. It's easy to say protect our country, restore our values, but more than anything, it's really about protecting America's values and the great country that our freedoms and liberties have given us. And speaking of freedoms and liberties, my Freedom Forum, I always to find out where we're losing freedoms. Where do you think that we're losing freedom in America?
I think we're losing freedom in America just about on every level. I mean, you look across the country and it's getting sadder and sadder and sadder by the day, William. Uh, you know, Look, we're going to start at the local level. I think it is so, so, so important. And this has been my message the past few weeks traveling the country. It's so important that we've got these elections coming up in 2024, not just to focus on the big ticket item, not just focus on the presidential election. Why that's incredibly important for the entire country, but make sure that you have freedom fighters in every branch of government, whether that's your lower, your city council, your mayor, get up to state government, your state house, your state senators, your governor, your secretaries of states that will control these elections that are so pivotal that we learned in the 2020 election. And then, of course, as you get into the presidential election, so we're losing freedom everywhere because you have these power hungry bureaucrats that are just completely controlling it in every level of government. So we're also losing freedom of speech. We see a lot of that across social media platforms, of
Right.
our rights being infringed on, of being silenced. I mean, we saw that with President Trump. He was the first big target, and all of us have fallen since, and they're constantly censoring, censoring, censoring. I mean, we've had to go to these alternative platforms like Rumble to just get our message out there.
Right.
It's scary that they're just taking down our freedom of speech.
Imagine, if you will, like you said, even our local governments, everybody wants to focus on us losing freedoms coming from our federal government, but it all starts with our local governments. I'm glad you brought that up as an excellent point, Brian, because even more so, like I think the government, the bureaucracy is so deep and entrenched in DC, but I think that the power gets taken for granted on a local level. They might be
Absolutely.
using it more, but on a local level, I can tell you how many different times the park director gets to cut down some trees or do some different things. We don't see that as an infringement on our freedom, but anytime that an unelected official, or an elected official for that matter, gets to do something without asking our permission or circumvent the Constitution, our freedoms are at risk. What do you think that we can do as a population to peacefully find ways to protect our freedoms and promote liberty in America?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is to get registered to vote, and the second thing is to show up to vote. And that again, that's been a big message. Speaking to people, I'll tell you a story that I was sharing with somebody earlier this morning. Obviously, we kind of underperformed in the midterm elections this past year in 2022, and I had done this big push traveling the country, specifically to young people, but really just everybody. Hey, make sure you're registered to vote. All of my friends, the day they turn 18, the first thing I text them is happy birthday. Make sure you register to vote. Go to vote.gov.
Yeah.
Really trying to get everybody excited to vote, making sure that they know all the information, get them educated on it, because the schools don't educate them on how to vote. They're too busy indoctrinating them with every other woke propaganda. So we're really trying to get that information out there. But I had a guy walk up to me. It was election day 2022. I was going around doing some speeches and events, and I had a guy walk up to me, and he was like, "Hey, Brilyn, I'm about to go register to vote and go vote." And I was like, "Oh, there were these deadlines, and like I really harped on like make sure you register by this day and like all that." So obviously, it's an education thing. We really need to get this information out there. So first of all, go register. Second of all, make a plan to vote. Actually, go vote on election day. Whether that's making a time on your lunch break,
Right.
whether that is going after you get off work or before work, or if you're in college, going before classes, in between classes, after classes, making sure that you use your constitutional duty is the best, the most peaceful way to push back against this oligarch that we've seen kind of try to overtake our country. And I'll say one more thing about kind of this local system we've been talking about. I think Americans really woke up in 2020 and realized how much power our local and state level governments have. I mean, you saw the states and the cities that elected freedom loving,
Right.
politicians who actually respected their constituents and respected their constituents' wishes. Those were the states that opened up from lockdowns first. The
Yes.
states, the cities, we're talking about Florida here that opened up first. Then you compare it to say California, a state, constituents that elected Gavin Newsom. He didn't listen to anything they say. He kept that
No.
state locked down forever. Some of it is still locked down. You have D.C., New York, California. Some of these places are still locked down to this day, 3 years later from COVID. They're still using this excuse of COVID. So I think that was a perfect example of what's so important on a local, state, and federal level to make sure that you have people that respect the Constitution, people that are there defending your rights and your freedoms in office.
And not only that, but we talk in terms of lockdowns as a way of hurting business, but it's not just the lockdowns hurting the way to travel or vote, but it's also the repercussions it's had for a long time on just the population and the businesses and everything like that. But another thing that I want to bring up, and an excellent point, Brylan, about just registering to vote and going and voting, but it also promotes a sense of responsibility to your community. It's not just the act of voting, it's that sense of responsibility that gets people more engaged. And while I have always believed wholeheartedly that the last election was stolen, and I'll just say it like that. I have a lot of friends who disagree with me on that, and how it was stolen. We could argue whether it was elections, machines, whatever. The fact is that not enough people went out and voted and got engaged. So whether it was stolen because people were not engaged and didn't take the responsibility to go out and vote, or whether some people believe that it was done through the machines or through the mail-in ballots, however you want to think about it, the way I look at it is it was stolen in the sense that not enough people are involved. And again, excellent point. When people get involved and they get registered and they go vote and they become more engaged in not only their civic duty of voting, but in their community, it's harder and harder for the oligarchs, the bureaucracy, whoever you want to point your finger at, to be able to steal in any way, shape, or form our future elections just by getting involved. Whether it's physically, reality, or mentally, theft of an election happens when people don't get involved. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why we need more people involved across this board, whether you're young, you're old, whatever. We need to make sure that you're registered to vote and you're excited and you actually have a plan to vote. The Democrats have made this really big push, specifically before the 2022 midterms, of make a plan to vote. Hashtag make a plan to vote was trending on across social media almost every single day. And people went online and they actually said, okay, I'm going to go vote at this time. I'm going to carpool these people. And obviously it worked out pretty well for them. So, the Republicans have to encourage that messaging going into 2024.
When you register to vote, you invest in your community. And what I also like when you said make a plan to vote, another excellent way to protect our freedoms when you say make a plan, because it also, what I tell people is get engaged, go invite some friends, like do a carpool. So, hey, look, guys,
Absolutely,
tomorrow's
yeah.
election day. Let's go have lunch. Let's all go vote. Let's go have lunch afterwards. You make it kind of an event, you say, look,
Yeah.
we're going to go vote, and then we're going to have dinner afterwards. You have a block party. You tell your friends, look, on the street, let's go we have a block party. We're all going to vote, and afterwards we're making a party. And you get that community involvement. Everybody gets invested in their community. they become more involved, and that is what prevents our elections from, let me just say, slipping away from us or being taken away from us. Tell us about your platform, Brilyn. What are you doing to protect freedom and liberty in America?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to say all of this. Uh, you know, I kind of explained how I started the Truth Gazette and how I got interested in politics. And for 6 years now, all I've done is commentary, and I love commentary, and that's 100% what I want to do. As I grow up and get older, I want to have like a whole show and continue to commentary. But I decided that being just a talking head wasn't enough for me. So
Mhm.
after the 2022 midterms, and I kind of looked at where the country was at, and a lot of blame was being thrown on, a lot of fingers were being pointed on everybody about why the Republicans underperformed in the midterms. And to me, it seems simple because of conversations like I just shared when I traveled the country. My generation, Gen Z, and millennials for that point, were uneducated. They did not know about what was going on. They didn't know about the election process. They didn't know about politics. Period. So I really have started this huge push this year since January about making sure that my generation is ready and prepared to vote in 2024. So in January, I wrote this op-ed titled "The GOP Must Address the Elephant in the Room." Gen Z. It blew up overnight, and I went on a network the next morning to talk about the article. And I said, "Look, the Republican Party is an endangered species at risk of extinction if we don't start involving
Right.
my generation." William, they blew up at me. They freaked out. They said, "Oh my gosh, Brilyn's fear mongering." William, I was not fear mongering. I was telling the truth. That is the truth. That's really what's going on in the country. The Republican Party is an endangered species at risk of extinction if we don't start involving my generation. So I decided that I was going to put action behind my words. I didn't just want to type an article and move on with my day. I wanted to actually do something about it. So I started working with the RNC, had some conversations with their chairwoman, and we have founded this inaugural RNC Youth Advisory Council that I'm honored to be co-chairing with a buddy of mine named CJ Pearson, who's another young person in this fight. So we are really, really, really have been, we started this in January, officially launched in May publicly, and have really been working a lot behind the scenes and now publicly as well. Getting boots on the ground to get information out there, educating people at college campuses on both sides of the aisle to make sure that my generation is registered and has a plan to vote. So that's been my whole thing, and I'm excited about
I absolutely love this. So, how can people find out more about you? Where do they find? I've been scrolling the Truth Gazette down at the bottom. How can more people find out about that?
Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. You can go to thetruthgazette.com. It's on the bottom of your screen right there, thetruthgazette.com, or all of my social medias are at Brilyn Hollyhand, the same spelling that's right there, right there. There you go. At Brilyn Hollyhand. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're everywhere. Just trying to get this message out to my generation.
I know you went over what one of your last stories are. We got another minute before our next guest comes on. What were some of your other highlighted stories that people might want to go to your site and see?
Sure. Yeah. Other than just articles, if you're more interested in watching some type of video, whether that's on YouTube or Rumble, I've done sit-down interviews, like I said at the top, with over 50 of our country's top political figures. So we've got Donald Trump Jr., we've got Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, Sean Hannity. We've got some huge big names on there. Kayleigh McEnany. So we're really doing a lot. And if you subscribe on the website this week, we might have some new interviews coming out this weekend and next week. So this is a good time to go ahead and check the website out and get on the subscriber email list for free to stay in the town. It's a
I
good
love it.
time.
Marlon, I can't tell you how happy I am that you came on the show today and shared. I love your youthfulness of approach to reaching young people to find ways to protect freedom in America. Love the fact that you're out there. Look, you're at your age, you could be doing a lot of other more fun things and getting involved with politics. But I love seeing how important our country is to you. And thank you so much for fighting for it. I really do appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, William. You have a great week, and I'll be happy to come back anytime.
We'll get you back on again soon down the road. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Senator Tammy Nichols, how are you doing today?
I'm good, William. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I can't tell you, it's been
Good.
too long since you've been on my show. The
I
last
was
time,
so glad you reached out. Yeah.
you were a representative, and afterwards you won an election. Now you're senator, and I really appreciate your fight for freedom.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to fight for freedom. So I enjoy it.
Well, a little bit about yourself, at the end of the interview here, I'll let you talk a little about your platform. But tell us a little bit tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like you said, I live in Idaho, and I was in the House for 4 years, and I moved over to the Senate side. I currently also co-chair the Idaho Freedom Caucus, and am the vice chair for the Agriculture Committee and on the Education Committee. And I'm a mom, and I do all the regular things with that. And but I have a huge passion for freedom and for politics in a weird way. But yeah, but here I am, and this is what I do, and I speak at a lot of events, and we're getting ready for our next upcoming session.
What's interesting is I'm gonna give you credit for the way that I sign my name and all my emails now. You're the one who taught me to say "in freedom."
Uh-huh.
You always sign your emails "in freedom," and ever since I got an email from it, oh, I like that. And
Yeah, it's a good reminder.
reminders help. Let's tell people, where do you think that freedom is being lost in America?
That's a really great question. I think that there's a lot of different components to it, but I would say one of the main issues that I see, even in my state of Idaho, which is supposed to be a very freedom loving, red, conservative state, which we tell people it is, but we do function under blue management, unfortunately. But I
Yeah,
think where a lot of our loss of freedom is happening is at the state level. The federal government, we know it has a lot of problems. It's out of control in many, many ways. But our issue really is boiling back down to states' rights. And for instance, Idaho takes approximately 43% of our state budget comes from the federal government. And with that money, there's always strings attached because, they say with shekels come shackles.
that's
And
right.
so there's always, yeah, and there's always strings attached. And every time we take more of that money, we are losing our state sovereignty, which in essence translates to us losing more and more of our freedoms because it's the federal government that is being able to oversee and take on the responsibility that the states are supposed to have to maintain their sovereignty. So I think that's one area where we are losing our freedoms in America because every state is taking federal money. Every state has, attachment to the federal government, and there's strings attached to that every single time. And like I said, when you take that money, you're losing a little bit of your state sovereignty each time.
Like I said, we're losing not only sovereignty but putting you in shackles at the same time. And
Absolutely,
the
absolutely.
Department of Education is a great example. There's the Federal Department of Education actually doesn't even really do anything about education anymore,
Yeah,
as much as it just says, here's a policy coming down from the federal government that,
right.
those policies that get created outside of Congress, so that Department of Education gets to circumvent our Constitution outside
Yep.
of Congress, still demand money from Congress, and be able to send it to the states with those same strings and shackles attached, so to speak. I like your point about that. And hey, Mr. State, you've got to do this policy to get
Absolutely.
money. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
we have those same trickle down, ideologies coming to every state to change them individually. Would you say that?
And we have a lot of NGOs that are, yeah, there's a lot of NGOs that are running things now and doing a lot of what we call government work. And they're non-governmental organizations that are stepping in, and they're also putting implementations into our states. So yeah, so that's one area definitely where we're losing our freedoms.
As a senator, I'm sure you see more and more of this federal money coming in. I use the example of the Department of Education, but where else do you see the money coming in that's controlling the individual states?
I would say one of our areas, Idaho just passed the largest budget this last session, and that was over almost $4.3 billion, and that was for Medicaid. And we have money that comes in from the federal government for that, and it has just grown. I mean, all these government programs, these government bureaucracies, they just continue to grow and grow and grow. And so, like you're saying, education definitely, our health now, so Medicaid, Medicare. I mean, there's a ton of money that's rolling into that, and so yeah, there's no shortage of which organizations there. Every session, we have more and more uh, NGOs, bureaucratic agencies that come to us asking for more and more money. And so, we are seeing it at every level, every level.
And the policies that they're able to create within their own NGO organization, are not only detrimental to the future of everybody's freedom and liberty, but it's going to get to a point that, when government is the way it's as fast as it's growing, has full control, they won't even need Congress to be able to create the laws.
Yep.
We'll be living by laws that are hovering on the outside perimeter of our Constitution in such a way.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I always ask people, what do you think that we, the people, can do to peacefully, and I stress that for various reasons, protect
Sure.
our freedoms and liberties in not only our state, but our country? And by the way, before you answer that question, I even have it on my website. The best way to protect freedom and liberty and save our country is to start in our own state. But what do you
Yep.
think that people can do to protect freedom and liberty in our country?
Yeah, that's an important question. And, we want to do it, like you're saying, peacefully. We want to be peaceful about it. I would say it really starts with the elections. Who are you electing into office at all levels of government, your local levels and your state, your federal level? And those people need to be held accountable. I'm always asking my constituents to hold me accountable, make sure that I'm doing what I said I'm going to do. But we also need to stand up and speak up. There's no time anymore left to just sit on the fence and watch things transpire. We have to be engaged and we have to be active. I'm one person in the legislature, and so I rely on other people to help and be vocal and do those actions that are needed to help facilitate the good things that we're trying to do and stop the bad things that come in. I would also say you want to make sure that your elected are upholding their oath of office, that they're upholding the Constitution and maintaining your freedoms, and that they're putting aside and stopping the bad stuff that's trying to come in, because every state has stuff that's coming into it that's not good, and be actively engaged. It's great to be able to get on social media and talk on how bad things are and how you don't like such and such. But until there's action, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good. So you want to be vocal, but you also need to have the action behind it. And so those are really good, easy ways for people to get involved. I have on my website, Nichols for Idaho, 100+ ways that people can get actively engaged, even if they just have a couple hours a month. But they're all peaceful, they're all easy to do for the most part, and they give people some really good ideas on how to be actively engaged.
You actually just I'm going to put up here your site, and that way people can find, like you just mentioned, Nichols for Idaho, and I want to
Yeah.
be able to give people that connection there for your site there. But you made an excellent point just now, Senator. I really appreciate, which is when you said about, we've talked about the NGOs and the money coming in the states, controlling the state, but you also talked about getting engaged with the individual elected politicians and holding
Right.
them accountable peacefully and professionally. But
Mhm.
what gets lost in that transition there, or that transaction, we'll say, and you just now made a great example of bringing it up, is when people get involved in holding their politicians or elected officials accountable, they're always constantly reminding them in a roundabout way, if you will, hey, when that NGO comes to you and says they need a law passed, or can you pass this law in the next legislative session? And they start working with these individuals on an individual basis to, for their 5 bills that they get for the next session or whatever the case may
Right.
be, and they say and that NGO or that lobbyist says, hey, Mr. Elected official, if you pass this law, your state will get this money. If those
Right.
people are actively engaged with the elected officials at all time, I see this in my own state quite frequently. If those groups are actively engaged, that politician's constantly being reminded, wait a minute, I better not
Yeah.
take that money, or I better not do that, because these people are reminding me, they're giving me good information.
They're watching you. Yeah, they
Ex-
are watching you. And we need it not only in the legislature, but like I said, at your local levels for your school board meetings, your city council meetings, all of that sort of stuff. People need to be attending those things so that they know what's going on and they know what to do and to let their neighbors know. So that's important. Very, very important.
It's good because I know in my state, I'm actively engaged in the legislative process every year. and we're working with senators, with the representatives. And there's a lot of groups that do a lot of research during the year and brings them valuable information. So excellent
Yeah.
point. Great way to
Yeah.
protect freedom and liberty in America. Senator, what are you doing in your home state besides being a senator, which is a great, I know is a lot of work, but I know from having talked to you and watching you how active you are. But let's tell the audience, what are you doing to be able to protect freedom and liberty in your state? Some
Yeah, you know,
better.
right. Well, for me, ever since I ran for office, one of my big things has been is to make sure that people are informed and that I'm helping to try to give them tools that they can utilize to educate themselves and to participate in the governmental process. Because the government's supposed to be by and for the people. If the people aren't part of that process, it doesn't function correctly. So that's always been one of my big things is to help engage people, help to give them the tools and to inform them. And so I do that through social media. I do that through my newsletters. You can sign up for my newsletters on my website. You know, I put a lot of information out there all day, all the time, every day. I'm putting information out. So that's one thing. You know, we're working on legislation already for this next session, and so there's tons of different ideas and different things that we're dealing with. So we're already working on issues to be able to help protect our state and protect people's rights. You know, people can run for office, and I encourage people and I help to try to recruit good people that will run for office. Not everybody wants to be in politics, not everybody wants to run for something, but we need good people in there. So I'm out there trying to help facilitate that, finding good people. You know, when I'm in session, I'm trying to make sure that I am voting for limited government, limited spending, to protect our freedoms and our liberties. And so I'm voting against the stuff that doesn't do that, and I'm trying to promote and vote for the stuff that does. So those are some of the ways that I do it. And I do a lot of speaking events, just going around telling people what's going on, because I get it. People have lives, they're working, they're taking care of their families. They don't have a ton of time to
Right.
try to do like what I do. And so I go to speaking events and I talk to people. Like one of the big ones is I went to the border, and people are so interested in what did I learn at the border. So those things help to educate people and inform them, and also give them ways that they can participate. But those are some of the things that I do. And then, of course, the Idaho Freedom Caucus. You know, we started that at this last session, and that's been a great caucus to be able to have. They're opening them up all over the state, and so that's another way that we're utilizing to that I'm trying to use to help protect and support our freedoms and our liberties and maintain those, because we don't want to lose those, and we don't want Idaho to turn into a California. So it's very, very critical that we're doing what we can to be engaged and to help others to do the same.
I love the Freedom Caucus. They got one here in Louisiana. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, the person that used to work with Louis Gohmert in D.C. as his legislative assistant and helped them start the Freedom Caucus there in D.C. lives in
Yep.
Louisiana. She was on my show 2 weeks ago, and
Great.
before we get to our next guest here in a minute, do you have any marquee legislation that you want to share, either from last session or that you're working on for this session, that promotes freedom and liberty?
Sure. So last session, I carried on the Senate side a bill to make sure that merchants weren't using specific codes to be able to track gun owners for purchases that they made for guns or ammo or any type of gun accessory. So we were able to pass that. There's been several states that have done that. Upcoming, I have a lot of bills, but one of my fortes that I'm going to be using is we passed in Idaho, the very first state to pass was personhood status. And with all the AI stuff that's coming out now, we wanted to make sure that we set the parameter on AI was not going to have personhood status plus some other things. So we're going to be expanding on that now and bringing legislation to help you know, kind of set the track for what's happening with AI to make sure it doesn't get the best of us, that we keep it in its lane, and that we can make sure that we're maintaining our personhood status with our freedoms and liberties.
Amazing. And people can find you at Nichols for Idaho. Is that right?
Yeah, all my social media is Nichols for Idaho. My website's nicholsforidaho.com, and you can find me on there on what used to be Twitter, or X now, I guess is what it's called, and Instagram and Facebook. So I'm on all those. And yeah, Nichols for Idaho.
Well, I encourage more people to keep up with you and support you in your legislative processes. You know, while you're, even though you're in Idaho, like you said, it's all about states' rights, and you are leading And this is what I want to thank you about publicly. You are leading the way for states' rights and for freedom and liberty. You're going to be one of the champions that we hear about more and more in the years to come. And I can't thank you enough for how hard you work. But I'm honored and I'm grateful that not only you're on my show, but grateful to work with you side by side. And I appreciate you.
Thank you, William. I appreciate everything you're doing and getting the information out there. And yeah, it's a fight worth fighting. So we're on a good team.
Senator Nichols, I'll see you soon. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, how's it going there, Chris?
What's up, buddy?
Nothing much, man. I saw you on there. We were finishing up with our last. I hope that you like that Senator Nichols.
She talked some 2A stuff. It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
She did. She had some good stuff there. Your site is CloverTac, right?
That is right.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I want to make sure that while we're talking, people can find you and know where you are. So I'm putting that up right here.
Now, they don't need to go while we're talking, though. Wait till after we're done talking.
Oh, we're going to do obviously the little bit the banner there for you. So talk to us, Chris. Let's tell the audience a little bit about you. We're going to talk more about your platform later here in the interview. But tell us about CloverTac and what you do.
That's tough because you hear a lot of terms thrown around. YouTuber is one of them, right? Social media influencer, all of this different stuff. Blogger, podcaster. It's strange. You can't really put me in any one box because I dabble in a little bit of all of it. So yeah, I mean, we produce obviously video content that goes out on YouTube, as well as alternative platforms such as Rumble and the Full 30 and Gunstreamer and YouTube and Brighteon, and the list goes on and on and on of the alt platforms that are out there. And then social medias. I mean, your mainstays like Facebook, like Instagram, not Twitter or Reddit so much, and then the audio podcast side of things, pretty much any platform you can think of, from Spotify to iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, you name it. So a little bit of everything.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about specifically your content near the end of the show here. But I got the chance to meet you at the NRA, convention, which is, oh, by the way, I still have my
nice. Your card was the coin.
That's right.
And believe it or not, I was digging for some stuff in my bag yesterday, I believe it was, and there was your coin. It was still in my bag. I'm like, I gotta put that somewhere.
Yeah, don't lose that gold coin. So tell me, I think that freedom and liberty in America we're losing it. I believe that it's at risk right now, and I know that you do too. From talking to you, which I want you to share with my audience. Where do you think that freedom and liberty is being lost in America?
I think primarily, and I don't know. There's reasons for this, but I think primarily, probably the First and Second Amendment. I think freedom of speech and maybe even freedom of religion to an extent has been whittled away at for a very long time. None of this is recent. I mean, if anybody's out there, they need to read up on their history and see how we lose freedoms in dribs and drabs more than we lose them all at once. But yeah, I think the freedom of speech, freedom of religion thing has been whittled away at for many, many years, as has for the last 100 years or so. The Second Amendment. So I think that's the big two, because those speak to a personal liberty, right? The liberty for you to believe the way you want to believe and say what you believe, right? And then the freedom to obviously defend yourself from tyrannical government, criminal elements, whatever it might be. And there's more to the Second Amendment, I believe, than just those aspects. But all of that speaks to a personal style liberty, right? People that are minding their own business. When you get into, some of the other things, the court system, the rule of law, you get into the Fourth Amendment, you get into Fifth Amendment, you get into some of those things. The vast majority of people never get into territory, I don't think, right? That is a big issue. But First and Second Amendment certainly is a daily thing. And so I think those have been whittled away at more than anything.
I want to give you some credit because you gave me a really unique thought that I want to thank you for. Which is, again, one reason I bring it on so many guests is because sometimes not only most all the time you learn unique information, but sometimes it's a different way of thinking. And what you brought to my mind as you were talking about First Amendment and Second Amendment, and I'm going to admit, Chris, I usually tell people everybody says First Amendment, Second Amendment, but I think it's even deeper than that. But you just made the First and Second Amendment even more important with this thought, which is when you when you suppress somebody's First Amendment right, you suppress their religious liberty, you suppress their thinking or you suppress them from being able to say what they want. Now they feel guilty for thinking that way too. When you suppress their ability to say it, you're also suppressing their ability to feel good about thinking it. Because if you can't say it, they're going to feel guilty. Like, wow, if I can't say this, maybe, I need to feel bad about it. Like, it's almost like some things you're not supposed to talk about in public.
Yeah.
You feel guilty for even thinking it.
Well, and society a lot of the times, because of a lot of the larger media elements out there, right? Society just reinforces the fact that, oh, you're not supposed to say that, or you're not supposed to believe that, or whatever the case may be. And truth is, unless we're harming somebody, unless for some reason my words cause physical or maybe in some cases monetary harm, then it's it should be fair game.
No, that's a great point.
You have every right not to like what I say, just as much as I have every right to say it. That's the way it should be.
Excellent point. It suppresses. It not only suppresses the ability to say it, it suppresses somebody's ability to think about it. So let's talk about something here. How do you think that people can peacefully protect our freedoms and liberties in America? What can the people do that's peaceful to be able to protect our freedoms and liberties?
The first thing that I want to say, so I'm going to put the cart before the horse a little bit here because I'll have to explain. But the first thing I want to say is to value your voice and make your voice heard. Social media, all of these tools that we have at our disposal, oftentimes can lead to they can be a dumpster fire. I don't know how else to put it. We use them to show what kind of food we had for lunch, or we use them for silly, trivial things, right? Or we use them to spy on the ex-girlfriend or the ex-husband, or to badmouth them, or to fearmonger in a lot of ways, right? Rather than using them to amplify whatever our voice is. Now, with valuing your voice and getting your voice out there and being heard, this is where we got to put the horses back in front of the cart. I think in order to do that, and sadly, the education system for years and years and years have failed us in this area.
Yeah.
We have to be educated in civics, and we have to actively pursue our civic responsibilities, and that can be a lot of different things. But when we go into a voting booth, for example, it's not about the R's and the D's. It's about that person. It's about what they believe. It's about, do their values align with your values as a person. The party should be irrelevant at that point. It gets into things about how government works, and that gets into the fear mongering. You hear it a lot of time, and particularly in the Second Amendment community, which annoys me. And don't get me wrong, it makes for good YouTube and it makes for good clickbait. So and so legislation passes gun control, and if you really look at it, like maybe the House passed gun control, but it's got zero chance of getting through the Senate and zero chance of the governor signing it, right? But they fearmonger this thing, and they prey on the people that don't understand our government system, that don't understand the court systems, right? From appeals court to appellate courts to district courts to the Supreme Court and everything in between. And that's all a part of civics and understanding how this country was set up and how it works. If we understand how this country was set up and how it works, and our founders and framers were great in doing that and in setting all of this system up, the checks and the balances are amazing. And once we can understand how that works, and then we can responsibly vote in the right politicians, because I don't call them leaders. They're not leaders. They're servants of the people. They're politicians.
Exactly right. I like
Yeah, we ain't going down that road. But yeah, vote in the right people as our representatives to adhere to those standards, and then we keep that balance.
this. That's amazing the way you say that, and a lot of people don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't put the two and two together. They don't put the civics together, which, to your point, is why I think that all too often our children aren't being taught civics. We're not being taught, basic forms of government. We're not being taught about how things are working. Here's the federal government. They're creating the laws. Instead, what's happened is, the bureaucracy in our country has gotten so big, that it circumvents Congress.
Yep.
So the old Schoolhouse Rock, where the bill used to sit on top of Capitol Hill. Now if they turn the camera the other way, they would be overlooking all the bureaucratic agencies that are now surrounding Capitol Hill in DC. That we don't learn about. So I certainly appreciate that thought. So tell me something, Chris. What are you doing to protect freedom and liberty? What are you doing on your platform? Let's talk about some of the things that you talk about.
I wish I could say I was doing a lot, but I feel like I'm not. I feel like I don't, and I'll tell you why. Usually I identify primarily as a quote unquote gun tuber, as a content creator. I like the shiny things, and that we met obviously
Right.
in our annual meeting where all the cool toys are out, just all kinds of nice, neat stuff, right? And so that's where my heart lies. I'm a lifelong firearm owner, and I love the trinkets and the toys. I love the things that we use to practice our Second Amendment freedoms, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate the Second Amendment. Obviously, I appreciate the Second Amendment, and I want to protect that. And the Second Amendment is what allows me to do the content on those things, right?
Right.
So I see myself more as, and a vast majority of your guests on here are probably legit activists. I see myself more as an advocate. I see myself more as an amplifier. And I'm going to take this opportunity just to plug a lot of people and programs that I do have on the podcast that I do talk about regularly, and try to amplify their voice and their message, which is important. And we've got Tony Simon with A Second Is for Everybody in the Diversity Shoot, doing an awesome job. We got Derek with Kids Safe Foundation, doing an awesome job. And I'm rattling these off quick. So please, folks, if you're out there, grab a pen and a paper, rewind it, and write them down. But we've got the DC Project, all the awesome ladies from 50 states with a DC Project that's fighting hard every day. We've got Moss Sheree with Black Guns Matter. We've got Kevin Dixie with Aiming for the Truth. Just no shortage of people out there just fighting the good fight, that are the true heroes, the true activists. And I see myself more in that supporting role now. At one time, and I guess still to an extent, as far as if you said, what do you do in the realm of activism? I think that a lot of the content I put out with the shiny trinkets and other things has a effect on society and the opinions and the perceptions and all of that stuff when it comes to how firearms are viewed with society. If we've got content out there on the internet with safe, responsible handling of firearms, then that's awesome. People can see cool things used in safe, responsible ways and go, hey, I want to get into that now, right? Maybe they never was a firearm owner before. That's a plus, right? That's not the ultimate end game of securing the Second Amendment right, but it brings people into, at least somewhat, into our camp. And then from there, the activists can take over, and the activists can really drive the whole 2A message home, I think. So it all has to begin somewhere. And I think that's more the role I played. Now, previously, I've been more involved. I've obviously worked with Texas GOA, with legislative efforts here in Texas, not just to get messages out, but contacting representatives and doing other things on a state level. Been heavily involved in the past with youth shooting sports. I think it's really important that we, not just the Second Amendment, but First Amendment, civics, as we talked about, and everything else. I think it's really important that we raise this next generation and the young people up understanding how this country works, and really having an appreciation for the freedoms and liberties that they have access to.
But Chris, I'm gonna go back a little bit, because you kind of downplayed, how important your role is. And I want to give you some credit. You kind of said, yeah, you're not as big, I don't do as much, or you kind of downplayed, what I think your importance is in our country. You're doing more than probably 98% of the people out there.
Right.
Most people that are out there in our country are they're complaining. Maybe they're sharing some Facebook posts. Maybe they're telling their friends. But you're actually, creating content. You're actually going to different events. And while you, like you say, you said you're simply promoting other platforms, just the fact that you're doing that, the
Right.
fact that you're tag teaming, you're working as a team. In my email that you saw that not everybody else got privy to, I talk about we're all in this for America.
Yeah.
I bring on platforms that are much bigger than me, and they're happy to be on my smaller platform. And I bring on people that have smaller platforms, where they think that I'm and I'm like, wait a minute. If we all work together, big guys and small guys, what was
Right.
that scene from Stripes? Little guys up the big guy. You saw the old movie Stripes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Bill
You know,
Murray.
if we're
Yep.
all working together, we're all doing something,
Mhm.
to help protect our freedom and liberty. Where maybe we're helping other people, maybe we're just getting involved. Senator Nichols was talking before about getting involved, engaged with elected
Mhm.
officials, and then our first caller, our first interview was Brilyn, who was talking about voting. If we all work together, on what we're good at, and we're all actively engaged and
True.
say, hey, we win. We all work together for our country,
Yeah.
for our freedoms, for our liberties. And that's what's going to take.
Yeah, we all have our lane, right? We all have our lane. And sometimes people get upset at somebody else because, you know, they don't understand that other person's lane. And it's okay. It's okay that we don't agree 100%. It's okay we don't all go in lockstep. The individual spirit is as Americana as it gets. You had people that pulled up roots and headed west, like literally loaded the wagon. We're out of here. We don't know what's out there, but we're going after it. And if that doesn't just echo the American individual spirit, right? Nothing does. And so no two people are ever going to agree on 100% on how things, even if they agree 99%, they're never going to agree 100%.
Right.
So to know that we're all going in the same direction and we're actually on the same team, and even though we might not like that 1%, somebody else does. To your point about me downplaying it, I would like to say, oh, I'm just playing the humble little Texas redneck. But no, I mean, I genuinely mean that. And I mean that for a reason. I said earlier that people should value their voice, and they have mechanisms out there in which they can make their voice heard. And you don't realize, so there's out of that 98% that do not do what I'm doing. Out of that 98%, a whole lot of them could do it better than me. I'm convinced of that. And even if they don't, the beautiful thing about everybody valuing your voice is realizing this internet and having a cell phone in the palm of your hand that 10-year-old little girls can manipulate and use. Like grown-ups can learn that. Come on. You can do it. So, get on there, create some accounts, and, put some freedom loving, pro liberty information out there. Talk about your values, talk about your hobbies and other things, because those are the connections that bring us together, right? Talk about your life. And, in doing that, what I tell people is you may start a YouTube channel, whatever, and you may only garner one follower, one single follower. But what if you garner one follower that has the power to then turn around and activate their voice and reach 1 million?
That's right.
It never would have happened had you not turned that camera on, had you not turned that microphone on, had you not spoke your mind, had you not made your voice heard. So it's really important that we do that, regardless of who we are.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to put it, Chris. And I couldn't have said it better myself. We got another minute before our next guest comes on. But I mean, that's that type of thing I'm talking about. Earlier in the show, I said, how our national news media is so much bigger than us. However, I think the more of us that team up together, work together, promote each other, be that one voice, that pebble, that gets thrown, in the lake, and that to murky up the still waters, to be that voice is going to be what it takes to save this country.
And make no mistake, the legacy media, the entrenched legacy media that, you know, the older ones of us anyway are used to, they're phasing out. They're dying off. It's happening. You're seeing it before your own eyes. People are turning to raw, real people to get their information, not corporate, you know, news types.
Well, I think as more and more people, you know, wake up and see, you know, and see that what the national media is doing, you know, and see that they're not being as true to, you know, to the
On
fact.
either side, by the way, on either side.
Oh, absolutely, you're 100% right. You know, and that's the problem. You know, is that now we don't, you know, is that you can't. Well, the far right and the far left is using the narratives and the ideologies through their own media outlets to divide us up to their benefit.
Mhm.
And that's an excellent point, Chris, because the more we wake up more people, the more that those national media stations shrink, the less control the far right, the far left, the political party establishments has to control over us, the more we get to work on things that protect freedom and American values that are going to save this country.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. That really is. You know, so Chris, tell us how people can find you. How can people more get involved with you?
So again, I'm doing a little bit of everything. So the easiest way I think for people to get on board, because people use different platforms. Some people hate Facebook, some people hate YouTube, some people hate this or that. So that's why I'm on so many. Go to clovertac.com, and from there, that's the centralized hub. Find a platform that you know, use, and love, and look us up.
You know, it's funny, like you said, you know, by getting more involved. That's how we work together.
Yeah,
Chris,
agreed.
thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate
You
it.
bet.
Hey, have a great day. Look, I'll see you soon on your show.
Yeah, sounds good.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, Ashley, how are you? How's it going?
Great. Good. I'm sorry that I am in my vehicle, but it is always getting calls to go run places. And if someone from my district says jump, I say how high. I try to be there.
Look, that's what I like about you. You know, it's because, you know, I'm gonna say something, but it's in a positive way. You know, that I know that you ran for Congress before, and it was unsuccessful, but I love the fact that you're still doing it, because you're like somebody, and I'm making this analogy, you are like an unelected congressman for your district, because you actually in some ways work harder than the current congressman that's in there. You know, because when you say what you just now said, I know, and I'm glad you use that opportunity. When you say, when somebody in my district needs me, I jump. I've known that about you, that you're working harder than the current congressman there. Well, we're going to talk about that when we have some time, because we're a little limited a little bit here, you know. But Ashley, tell me something. Where do you think that freedom is being lost in America?
It's being lost everywhere, but I think that the most crucial part is it's in our everyday lives. It's a cut by a thousand cuts, death by a thousand cuts. It's, little pieces of what we appreciate as American citizens are being taken away in these fragments that people think, well, it doesn't affect me. Well, in the long term, it does. When it comes to your speech, your ability to travel, to our ability to how we choose to communicate with one another. And some of that is the respect of, some people live one way, some people live another, but it should be common decency that just says, you shouldn't be forced to say something that you don't want to either. So, I mean, I think it's just this entire dialogue of everyday life that is just being stifled.
Well, when you talk about that, do you see that? I mean, you're in Illinois, you're running for Congress, but when you see that, are you seeing more and more of that in Illinois?
Oh, yes. Illinois is a haven for bad politics, especially in the Democratic Party. It's terrible. And we're seeing that with no cash bail as of the beginning of September. No cash bail means criminals will have more rights than victims. You could have a kidnapper, you could have a rapist, you could have all of these things, and they get out no cash bail.
Now you're running for Congress. As a congressperson, what do you what do you think that you can do to peacefully protect that in Illinois, or do something about it? We'll say.
We need common sense legislation for things like that. I don't believe that people should sit in jail for things like traffic tickets or minor offenses. But when it comes to things like rape, kidnapping, abuse, attacks of that nature, no, there has to be consequences and no cash bail for people like that, especially people who come from other states who will not be allowed to be extradited. That's huge.
So what are you doing besides this, besides being involved? I know that, like I said, I know that you're working harder than the current congressperson that's there, but what are you going to be able to do after you're in Congress to help protect freedom and liberty in your own state?
Really work on a just legislation. To say that you're going to do something completely new, and you're going to be able to save the world all at once, it's impossible. But altering legislation so that it makes sense and then bringing forth new ideas once you've proven yourself, I think is a logical way of creating positive change.
Now, that's something you're doing, but I always say there's a lot of people, as we talked with Chris Dover in the previous interview, there's a lot of people who, they don't want to run for office. They don't want to maybe they don't want to be public. What do you recommend to people on what they can do to peacefully find ways to professionally protect freedom and liberty in America? What do you recommend to others that they can do?
Be poll watchers, be election judges, go out and vote, and be responsible for the vote so that the people who want to make change, if you don't want to be that front runner, that they have an honest chance at the election.
Love it. Ashley, how can people find out about you other than your website that's shown at the bottom so that people can get involved with you?
Facebook, Ashley Ramos for Illinois. On Twitter, Ashley R to Congress. Yes. So those are the two platforms I use the most.
Before going on to the next guest, that you're somebody who's not only involved in your own state. I see you at all the conventions. You're always looking for ways to find ways to fight for America, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ashley, have a great day, all right? Hey, Ambassador, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, Bill. And when I look at your formal name, the very famous William Wallace, the great Scot, and how he was commemorated in the movie Braveheart by Mel Gibson. As soon as I saw your name the first time, I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm mostly Scottish too. So
are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. All the times I see you out and about, but I don't have my kilt on when I'm in public.
No, but I have a tartan as well. And my Pennsylvania ancestors actually came to the colony to escape religious persecution. And 8 generations ago, one of my Pennsylvania ancestors fought in the American Revolution. And then decades later, a century later plus, fought in the Civil War. So great men run in my family, and women have to also be in the fight.
Well, my genealogy goes straight back to William Wallace. So the fight for freedom is in my blood. And as my show grew over the years, I was looking for ways that I could promote freedom and liberty. And I thought, how can I? Well, what to name my show? And then I said, well, William Wallace is for freedom, but I'm for freedom in America. So William Wallace for America.
Beautiful.
So and again, that fight for freedom, I think, has to be staying ever vigilant inside of us, because we take it for granted, and especially with the great country that we have, we take it for granted here in America. So I'm always asking people from different walks of life, different platforms, where do you think that freedom is being lost in America?
Well, Bill, I'm sure that your audience is very savvy about this too, but we can all see that the first thing that comes to my mind is the loss of freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. And now we know that the government has illegally, through third parties and social media companies, suppressed our freedom of speech. And the knowledge of it, most especially, it became public because of the pandemic. And suppression of speech about medical freedom, about vaccines and what was happening, even from the highest medical authorities. And we saw what Anthony Fauci did. I believe he belongs in jail for what he did. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But there are so many abuses of freedom of speech, freedom of religion. We saw during the pandemic, they closed the churches. Never again.
Never.
Never again do we allow that to happen. But we also have this administration is going to come for the guns. I know that we're not thinking about it right now, but they will. I made a couple of notes, other things that I believe they're attacking besides medical freedom, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly with the churches, but also political speech. We saw that President Trump is being indicted over and over again. And in the case of the J6 indictment, it's political speech. It's especially protected if you're running for office. You can basically say anything. And you can't hold him to one standard and others to another standard. And that gets me to another issue, and that is equal justice under the law. I think that is being tested by this rogue DOJ and the illiberal Biden administration, the corruption there. And then parents' rights. That is freedom to be able to raise your children how you see best. And you can see the schools are trying to trans children. Governments are now trying to impose that. California Assembly just passed a bill saying that if you have oral or anal sex with a minor and it's consensual, that it's not going to be as serious a crime. So we can see our freedom being eroded by, I would call them Marxists and leftists, who they're not playing by the same rules as conservatives have played. And we better grow a pair, and we better fight like we care about this country. I think we have never been in more threat from inside and outside. If you look at what's happening outside too, with the wars that have been enabled by the radical administration, and then you see the open border and the other various things happening. I believe that this is as serious as our founding. It's that we are under that much stress, and there's many reasons for it, but we've let go of every pillar of influence in our country, whether it's media, even sports, you could say, education, government. It has all been taken control by the Marxists. And so how do you wrest that control when we are not the powerful, we are the people? Well, there are a lot more of us than there are of them. So I think we'll find solutions.
You know, you brought up an excellent point, that two things that made me think, that made me really think, and I want to give you credit for that, which is one, you know, when you talk about the freedoms that they're trying to take away, but you also talked about the freedoms that they're trying to expand. The freedoms that they're trying to expand are either anti-American, they're either anti-America, or they're anti-human. I mean, to give sexual predators, you know, more rights. You know, they're trying to take away rights of law-abiding citizens while they're trying to give more rights to people that are actually breaking not only laws of America, but laws of humanity. They're breaking God's laws, you know, and like you said, you know, the leftists are trying to give them more expanded rights, taking our rights away. The other thing that you brought up and you expanded upon, which I appreciate, is, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in my another interview earlier, which is the suppression of the First Amendment right or the Second Amendment right isn't just taking away our speech or our religious abilities or our Second Amendment rights. It's also taking away that fire in your belly. It's also it makes you feel guilty for thinking certain ways, for wanting certain things, or even believing in certain things. It makes you feel guilty about things that are okay, let alone not being able to talk about it.
I totally agree with you. And the one word that really is resonating still in my mind that you just said is anti-human. And when you talk about anti-human, I think we also have to talk about the climate change hoax and how this is a whole of global government effort to lock people in the area that they live in, to change how crops are produced, take the farms from the little farmers. It's already happening in Europe, and you can see how they don't want us to have the benefits of fossil fuels, which have contributed to human flourishing, and why we live such a beautiful, comfortable life today.
It's absolutely right. You know, they want to talk about the climate change as being man-made, and I always say it's just cyclical. I mean, I'm in Louisiana. You know, my dashboard read 104 degrees today.
Oh my
but
God.
I'm in global warming, and they talk about the rise of tides, but what they don't show you is you know, tectonic plate shifting around the world is causing sea levels to lower in some places and rise in others. And that has nothing to do with being man-made, along with just being cyclical. So I certainly appreciate that. Well, when you were ambassador overseas, did you find other countries looking to us for and saying, hey, look, you all got to stop this? Or do you see their laws changing in a way that made you worry about what might be coming to the United States?
Well, so what they were doing, their laws made me worry about what was coming here. They were further along in the implementation, and we can see it happening like in the Netherlands. The farmers have risen up because they're trying to take farms like private property. In the West, that's sacrosanct, and how our society is arranged, right? Through family, private property ownership. Well, they're trying to break everything, taking those farms and then telling different countries are being told you have to cull the cattle. 30% of your cattle have to be killed and things like that. They want people to eat worms. These are not only anti-human, I would call that evil.
It is.
Tell sophisticated people that are living on planet Earth, you have to grow and eat bugs. That's just plain evil. And we have to call it what it is. Right. These people have a diabolical agenda. Call it out for what it is. But in Europe, when I was ambassador, Denmark is very, very pro climate change because it's sort of how they do business. They're big on renewables and things like that, but they have a tiny population and a tiny country in Denmark. It's like New Jersey with 5.5 million people. They can do that. We're a big nation with, we have many, many different climates and we're very diverse as a country. That doesn't work here. We still do manufacturing here. Right. But two things I did with my team, working with my team, we blocked the Russian gas pipeline, Nord Stream 2, working with the White House. The only place it was never completed was my area of responsibility. And how we did that was we worked to stop it from being completed the whole time I was there. And so that was a win for the United States and for freedom. And I kept working with our allies saying, why are you importing Russian gas? We've got gas.
Right, we have it here.
Nuclear, right? And so that was one win, was we know Joe Biden okayed it, but during the Trump administration, I was able to block it working with his White House. And then secondly, is I was able, working with my team again in the White House, to block Chinese-made 5G in all of Denmark. And we were the first country in Europe, the first foreign minister to come out and say, we're not going to use that. And so we were able to counter Russia and China from Denmark, create jobs here at home. We increased our US exports to Denmark while I was there by over 43%. So we created jobs at home, and that was one of my goals. But Denmark and Europe are, they're further along with the warfare through banks and other means, lawsuits as well against energy companies. And you can see it here as well. They're having a hard time getting funding for projects. And then you have the lawyers suing to stop projects like refineries, right. New nuclear power plants.
I'm going to go backwards for 1 second before I ask you the next question, which is, you said something exactly what I've been saying about it's going to be evil. I don't know, like when I look at how South Africa, they've taken away farmland from homeowners over there, and they're still doing it, and nobody talks about it. You're making us eat worms and bugs and think, oh, that's normal, and taking away property and taking away the ability to grow our own food. I often wonder, and sometimes I have this conversation with people, and they say, oh, that's going to be this one world government, or that's going to be this dictator, whoever that decided. I said, I don't know that there's any one person or group of people that I can actually think up all of these nefarious plans, as much as it is just a sense of evil, and I just think that there is that evil is being used as a tool and an instrument to be able to control mankind, for the ability for people who want to control us and take us over. That's just a simple way to say it. Right. But what other things is America First policy working on?
Well, I'm proud to be vice chair for energy and the environment at America First Policy Institute. And all of your viewers and followers can go to their website. We have 22 policy centers, and it covers everything that any of your viewers could care about, from, faith and family to, opportunity for working people, security. We have wonderful people from the Trump administration and prior Republican administrations who are experts in their fields. I'm working on energy to bring back American energy independence and dominance. That's what we want. We want to bring it back. And it's so they can go to AFPI's website. I'm also going to be the president of the newly formed America First Policy Institute Pennsylvania chapter.
I love it.
They're starting chapters all across the country. They have 19 that they're targeting. And then I'm just starting up something called Fix Pennsylvania. And it is a system to register conservative voters so that we increase, just like they did in Florida under Governor Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis, registered conservative voters. And that's how they flipped that state from swing state to red.
I love this. And now, how can people get involved with that? Besides going to AmericanFirstPolicy.com, you mentioned the other organizations. Is there a website where they can go and find out how to get involved?
Yes, the fixpennsylvania.org. We have a WinRed portal, and I will be putting up online ways to give to Fix Pennsylvania if people care about that swing state. There are 4 swing states that we really want to help and make sure that we win so that we stop the march of the takeover of our country by the leftists. But there are other things that your viewers can do. They can go to precinctstrategy.com and register to be a precinct committee man and volunteer in that way and fill that slot. We have a lot of Republican openings. They can volunteer to be a poll watcher or a poll worker or volunteer in their area to legally chase ballots. Every state is different, but every state has a playbook. And there are so many other things. You know that they can run for school board, even if they don't have a child in the school, or row offices. There is no office that isn't important. They're all important, Bill.
Well, and to your point, a lot of people think in terms of voting. They go, oh, it's something that's going to vote somebody out or keep somebody in. And I always say voting is bigger than that. Voting is a sense of investment into your community. Voting is something that when you do it, you're investing. You feel like when you put your dollars into an investment, you feel like you're responsible. When you vote, you feel another sense of responsibility to your government and your community in a way that you get more involved. And when you get more involved and you get other people to get more involved, it's that sense of responsibility that expands. And that's what keeps elections safe and secure, not only on a local level, but on a national level. I love what you're doing in Pennsylvania because that's one of the states, that had problems, right?
You have a dog. Do you have a dog?
I have a dog, my co-host, in the studio.
Sweet.
He has been quiet the whole time.
What a good boy. So just to your point about voting, believe it or not, hundreds of elections across our country every year are decided by one vote. So really one vote does count. And I'm encouraging every one of your viewers to sign up and get a mail-in ballot. Whatever is legal in your state, sign up and do it, but bank your vote early. Don't wait for election day. There's going to be so much mischief on election day. We have to beat the Democrats at their own game. So get your ballot in. And then also, if I could just suggest that they call the White House and tell President Biden or email and tell him, no way, hell no, do we want to be in the WHO agreement that the WHO controls our nation and our healthcare in the next pandemic, because we know there will be a next one. And then I'm sure that probably our not so friendly folks over there in the Chinese Communist Party are already brewing up the next one. And then also they can call and they can email their congressman. The number is online and the email as well. There's a general box number for Congress and for Senate, or they can go to their own congressman or senator's email on their website and tell them what they want them to do. Doesn't matter which party they're in. They need to register their opinion and be loud and proud about it, and then talk to their friends. And then if they're inclined, I hope that they'll help people get registered to vote, because They can go to churches or gun shows and register people to vote. That is the most important thing, is that we increase our reach. And we know that the faithful and people that love our Second Amendment, many of them are either not registered or they're just not bothering to show up. And you can tell them, if you care about your religious freedom and you care about your Second Amendment, you owe it to yourself and your children and grandchildren to get registered and then show up and then chase that person's ballot if you'd like, or elected people that are running for office can do that.
I love the election approach. I love the voting approach. And I love how you expanded on that about getting involved and registering people. I don't know if you know Brilyn Hollyhand. He was on earlier today, and that was one of the things that he had talked about is, how he's 17 years old, and on all of his friends' birthday, he says, "Happy birthday, go register to vote."
I love it.
And I always tell people on the show too, Mike, have a voting party. Like literally go and say, look, hey guys, we're gonna go vote and have lunch, or we're all gonna go vote and have dinner afterwards. And you do it like that, and you make it a community thing. And then those people that are invested in the community are also doing things like you're talking about, voter outreach, registering more people to vote, going to gun shows. Scott, there's a gun show here. There's a regional gun show that sponsors my radio program, where we get Scott Pressler to go to all their gun shows.
How much do we love Scott Pressler?
Oh yeah,
he's terrific, isn't he?
Yeah, I've had him in 3 times in Louisiana, and we had a gun show here about 2 months ago when he came in and registered people to vote. And again, it's about getting people involved.
It is, and the point of this is to preserve our constitutional republic, make sure that we preserve this freedom that we so enjoy for our kids and grandkids and in the future, and that we increase opportunity, because we know that, for instance, under President Trump, we had the best employment in our lifetimes for women, for Hispanic Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, that we had manufacturing coming back. And he had, before the pandemic, brought back more than 750,000 manufacturing jobs. We have to make things here. And so it's really important that we close the border. He will do that because he did it. That we stop these foreign wars, stop funding Ukraine. That's Europe's problem, and it's not our responsibility. We make sure no Americans are going over there and dying for this. And that we make sure also that we preserve the freedoms for our kids to go to school and not be groomed, for freedom of speech. So there's so many reasons to fight for 2024 and to elect constitutional conservatives.
And 2 more points to bring up that you reminded me again of is, one, we can do this on a state level. If more people got involved, everybody thinks that we have to do it on a national level, and so they get intimidated. And I always tell people, you can work in your own state legislatures to be able to help fight, to help protect all of these things that we've talked about. We can work with our local legislators to do things like protecting children, protecting our elections, and doing those things on a state level. The other thing to bring up that you brought up is how sometimes elections are lost by 1 or 2 votes. And a lot of people don't realize how close they are. But I'll tell you who does realize it are the people who don't agree with us, or they want to tell us how wrong we are. And what I mean by that is, I have people who identify as Republicans, think they're Republicans, or even Democrats. They'll tell me, to talk about that we have problems with our elections is a false narrative. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, our elections are okay. And I said, how do you think that? They said, well, most elections are lost by less than 1 or 2%. Or I'm sorry, I said it the wrong way. They said they like to say that election fraud only accounts for less than 1 or 2% in our elections. And I said, have you looked lately at how much elections are being won or lost by? Less than 1 or 2%. Right. So it correlates with what they're saying, but they still don't believe that elections are a problem. Elections are a problem.
Right. So they can also get involved in their county level. So counties have a county chair. They can run for county chair, or they can be one of the people on the committee in their county. They can run for their local school board. So you can go as local as you want, even to the precincts. And then when you talk about, you were talking about elections, I just want to give you a brief, a little bit of information. I ran for the Senate in the 2022 cycle. And
I remember.
one thing I learned was when Dr. Oz won the primary on election day, his opponent, John Fetterman, had almost 1 million ballots already banked, where Dr. Mehmet Oz had about 250 votes banked. You can't make that delta up, the 750,000. Right. That's why I said people have to register to vote early and get the ballot in, because things are going to happen on election day. Maybe you can't make it, the car doesn't start, that somebody's baby's sick, or work calls in and you get distracted. About 5 or 10% of those people are not going to make it in on election day. Just stuff happens. Right. And so banking those ballots, I would make a goal for Republicans, bank 60%, because the Democrats I think the Republicans banked 40% with governor of Virginia, the new governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. He banked about 40% before the election. So they had a big effort to get those ballots in. And he was successful by about, like you said, 1 or 2%. Right. So we have to bank those votes. We cannot come from behind on election day and in 8 hours do what the Democrats have done in 60 days. There's no 8 hours to 60 days win. It's not possible.
Ambassador, you are amazing. I got to tell you,
you're amazing, Bill.
Well, I enjoy meeting you, not only in sort of the public places that I run into you at, but I've enjoyed following up with you and everything. But to hear you more in person like this, I got to tell you, having more time with you, I look forward to bringing you on again sometime.
Thank you. So
and doing something with you on we'll just talk about America First policy, update people on what you're working on. I think it's important to get more people involved.
Bill, my website is carlasands.com. I'm on Twitter, Carla H. Sands. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Carla Sands. So I hope that your followers can follow me, and let's get this done for 2024, Bill.
We're going to do it, and I'll be in touch with you soon.
Thank you. Take care. God bless.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.